Hello and welcome. My name is Ellen with Ellen Estelle, and today I'm going to show you how to sew Mccalls M6896. So I've sewn this pattern before and I really like the silhouette. It's a close fitted top with princess seams that has a flare at the waistline here, which I really love. It has variations in the neckline. This is the first time I've actually sewn the round neck version. So the pattern calls for linens, challis, stable knits, faux leather, or suede fabrics. I'm actually using a cotton fabric that I found from SR Harris. If you haven't already, you can view my haul and tour from SR Harris, but this is one of those fabrics. It has a really pretty little picturesque view of a Paris scene. It has all these little people, it has the Louvre, it has the carousel and the Eiffel Tower. I like the print a lot because of like how dense and ditzy it is, but it's also a conversational print, and I knew I wanted to make it a top, so I got 2 yards. In this tutorial I'm going to show you how to fully line the top. This fabric was pretty thin and I knew that if I didn't line it I probably wouldn't wear that often, so I decided to line it in a similar weight white cotton fabric. I show you how to fully enclose the lining at the zipper, at the hemline, and at the armholes. It's also important to note that this pattern may need some adjustments, so I show you how I adjust it to fit my body a little better. There's a lot of seams. There's a princess seam in the front and the back as well as the side seam, so I use those to my advantage to taper in and contour a little bit better, and I also rounded out the armhole as well with those adjustments. Keep watching to learn more. First, I'm going to start out by cutting out my pattern pieces from my fashion fabric. I will not cut out the neckline facing pieces since my top will be fully enclosed. Then I'm going to cut out all of the pieces using my lining fabric, minus the neckline facing. For the front and back neckline facing pieces, I will cut them out of a lightweight fusible interfacing to add some support and prevent warping. Now I'm going to sew the front and back side bodice pieces with right sides together along the princess seam like this. There will be extra fabric around the bust. The extra fabric must be eased in so there's no puckers by gently pulling on the fabric around this curve. The same thing should be done for the back and side back pieces respectively. When it's done, it should look like this. Press the seams flat and towards the back in order to achieve this more professional look. I've also finished my raw edges with a serger. Now repeat these same steps for the lining fabric. Make sure you're pinning right sides together. After you've sewn the front and back pieces to the front and back side pieces like this, fuse the interfacing to the wrong side of the lining fabric at the neckline. Next, I'm going to take my front and back bodice and pin them together at the side seams and shoulder seams with right sides together. Sew at 5/8 of an inch and finish the raw edges. Repeat for the lining. Now here's where I did my adjustments. When trying on my bodice, I noticed that it was big around the armhole in the front and the back. So I tapered in the bodice along the front and back princess seams as well as the side seams like so. In order to determine how much to take out, I pinned the top while I was trying it on. I am not taking out any fabric at the waist because it does fit me, so I'm tapering my line to the waist. Once I sewed along these lines, I took what is called a French curve and redrew the armhole so that the curve was more symmetrical. I then cut the fabric at this line. And make sure to repeat whatever adjustments you make to your lining as well. With right sides together, I sewed the fashion fabric and lining together at the neckline. In order to make it sit better, I am clipping the seam allowance to, but not through the stitching line. You can choose to finish the seam allowance and/or sew an understitch line in order to make it lay even more flat. Now flip the top inside out so that your fashion fabric and lining are right sides together. Sew together the fashion fabric at the center back seam from the notch to the hem. Finish the seam allowance with the serger or pinking shears all the way down the center back seam and press the two sides of the seam allowance away from each other. Repeat for the lining. Then, sew the lining to the fashion fabric with right sides together all the way around the hem. Finish the raw edge. I chose to do an understitch to the lining in order to make the hem lie more flat. Now it's time to sew the armholes. With the right sides together, sew the lining to the fashion fabric all the way around at 5/8 of an inch. Clip the seam allowance to, but not through the stitching line. Finish the raw edge and understitch for a nicer finish. Be sure to press your armhole all the way around with your iron, as well as your newly sewn hem, in order to create a more professional look. The final task is to sew the invisible zipper into the center back seam, from the top of the neckline to the notch. In order to fully enclose the lining around the zipper, you can either stitch it down by hand or flip the fabric inside out so that the right side of your lining is touching the zipper tape. Leave a little opening so that you can flip your top right side out. Hand stitch the lining at the very end of the zipper. And now you're done! Mccalls M6896 is one of my favorite tops. Such a flattering silhouette. Be sure to like and subscribe. Until next time.